the non-living components or the abiotic components, they include air, water, sunlight, which basically contribute to changing temperature, the climate of Earth, how it is shifting towards a warmer climate. Global warming is happening, right? So any shift in temperature or the existing temperature, climate, which is because of water, the surface, air, sunlight. So all these factors are the abiotic factors. So environment of long has been present on Earth, and it has changed over several years. It wasn't so polluted earlier. There wasn't so much human population or human interference earlier. So as the Earth has grown, as it has developed, as people have improved their standard of living, there has been an increase or development of technology. So with this development of economy and technology, the environment has started degrading, it has started declining, and we'll be studying what the basic structure of environment is and what are the things which affect environment, how it is getting degraded with time. So environment, it is this term has been derived from a French word. It refers to the combination of all biotic abiotic factors which are present, and this basically environment, when we say, it includes water, air, land, and it basically refers to the interrelationship, the relationship which may exist between the biotic and the abiotic factors, and the relationship which brings them together. So interactions between the biotic and the abiotic components of the environment, it leads to a functional ecosystem. It leads to the nature which is functioning, which is performing all the functions and providing us all the necessary components that we require for our development or for progressing further. So it is a well-known fact. It has been well established that all the human activities, all the anthropogenic activities, or the unsustainable consumption, increasing pollution, or unplanned usage of natural resources, wastage of water, energy. So all these factors are somehow contributing towards the unsustainable development or unsustainable movement of nature. So this unsustainable consumption of natural resources by human race, or the anthropogenic increasing anthropogenic activities, they are significantly damaging the environment, and that is why Earth and the pace of degradation of Earth is, it is exceedingly fast. It is increasing at a very fast pace. So this that is why it becomes our responsibility to not only protect environment from getting degraded or polluted, but to also educate the coming generations, to also make people aware around us who maybe are of our generation or are probably people of other generations, are elder people, younger people. So it becomes our responsibility to make people aware of how little actions matter, how small changes in their lifestyle, or how, or ways in which they live or probably do things, how they can significantly account for the changes in environment, how it can protect the environment from getting degraded. So this is the technical definition of, I have provided to you two technical definitions of environment. You can use it. It's a very basic thing. It's basically anything which surrounds you. You don't have to mug everything up. You can use your own language. तो उसमें that's not a problem. But you can refer to any of these definitions if you want to. So we'll probably go about studying them. So before we proceed further, why are we studying environmental science? Can somebody look at these pictures, and can somebody tell me why is it important to study environmental sciences? Why do you think
Ma'am,
it's important? Hmm?
ma'am, it is important because we are unnecessarily using the resources and destroying our
Hmm.
environment,
Okay.
which will create trouble in our near future for the human beings only. For example, we can see in the picture that the sea level has increased and the tsunamis has taken over more over the land. So
Oh.
it is going to increase with the increasing years as global warming is increasing. We have seen that every year the degree Celsius temperature of the Earth is increasing day by day. So
Hmm.
that could result into the rise in the sea level. So that will submerge the coastal areas. So if we will study about that, so definitely we can prevent that. We can stop that from happening.
So what's your name? The one
Swapnil.
who. Swapnil. So right,
Swapnil.
Swapnil. Right, Swapnil. So like you said, yes, global warming is happening. The sea levels are rising, and events like tsunami or the avalanche which happened recently on 7th of February in India. So all these activities, they are a consequences of the things which are happening in the earth. So like you said, global warming is happening. But do you know a couple of contributors of global warming? Why is global warming happening? Can you think of a couple
Yes,
of
ma'am.
reasons? Hmm?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Global warming is definitely increasing because of the industries, increasing industrialization, industry revolution. The several gases are released from the industries. For example, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, CO2's extremes are used. They are released in water also. So all these are leading to the global warming
Okay.
and
And
melting of the
chlorofluorocarbons,
glaciers also.
Yes. What?
and
Sorry, I didn't.
CFCs, and also deforestation.
Very
Because
good. What's
CFC
your
use
name?
has
The
been.
one who said CFCs. What is your name?
Sharan, Sharan, used in
Sharan.
refrigerants and ACs.
Very good. So, like Sharan said, and also like Swapnil said, both of them are correct. Because of increasing industrialization, there are certain gases which are getting released. And the gases which are getting released, in addition to carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, nitric oxide, there are gases called chlorofluorocarbons which are also getting released. So, yes, industrialization is a big contributor of global warming. Deforestation is also a big contributor of global warming. But there's another. Sharan, when you said CFCs are getting emitted, do you know what is the primary source of
Yes, ma'am.
chlorofluorocarbons? Yes,
Yes,
what?
ma'am. Chlorine. Chlorine basically goes up and oxidizes that oxygen, so O2 plus O forms ozone.
Conditioners, ma'am. Air
Basically,
conditioner.
it depletes the ozone molecules, like O3 turns into oxygen and one O molecule, O atom
Very
basically.
good.
So that depletes
So
that ozone.
you're quite aware of how it functions. Very good. So did you study? Did you have biology in 11th, 12th?
Yes, ma'am. I was having PCMB. So
Very
study.
good. So that is correct. But my question was, what is the source of chlorofluorocarbons? You explained the whole
Air
thing very
conditioner.
correctly.
Ma'am, air conditioner.
Very good. Air
Refrigerants and
conditioner.
all.
Air conditioner and refrigerators.
Right. So
Yes,
refrigerators.
ma'am.
No,
Air
ma'am.
conditioner
Refrigerators
also.
अब नहीं होते. मैम रेफ्रिजरेटर में सब HFCs यूज होते हैं.
I know FFCs use होते हैं, but that is the high-end technology. It has been banned, as you correctly said. But there are certain, but that is what is there on paper. There are still a lot of countries. So, like you said, chlorofluorocarbons have been banned. They were earlier replaced by hydrofluorocarbons, and then hydrofluorocarbons were also replaced. But not every country follows those rules, and that is the reason why global warming is increasing. So every year, each country is given a different target. They have to reduce their carbon emissions by the X amount of X percentage of carbon emissions. They have to reduce a certain amount. So yes, like you said, they've been banned, and high-end technologies, better, I would say, alternatives are present, but there are still a lot of countries, including our own, and there are still a lot of people who are using those means because they probably cannot afford such high-end machineries or such high-end refrigerators or air conditioners. So even though they've been banned under Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreement, but there are a lot of countries who are still not following them, and they are still illegally being used in a lot of nations, including our own country. So we'll come to that in further later chapters. So like you said, we're studying environmental sciences because small things, small, very minute things which we are probably not aware of, and we are somehow contributing to global warming in one way or to decline of our environment in one way or the other. So like you said, global warming and the chlorofluorocarbon emissions, then we each one of us is responsible for polluting the environment in some way or the other. We we so uh, usage of personal vehicles, which contributes to increasing emissions in the environment, then most of you would, or lack of awareness, improper education system, so a lot of you would not be aware of this fact. But has everybody heard of the World Trade Center, the attacks which occurred on the World Trade
Yes,
Center?
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, that
And
plane which crashed.
yes, and has anybody heard of Johnson's baby powder? It's one example I'm giving. Have you ever heard of the talcum powder that everybody uses?
Yes, मैम
Yes,
बच्चों का होता
Johnson
है.
BP.
Yeah, so everybody is
Johnson
aware
baby.
of that. Yeah, so everybody is aware of that. So there is a heavy metal called arsenic. So the people all over the world, they are so obsessed with achieving development that often science, environment, and awareness, they're ignored. So when the World Trade Center was built, the main heavy metal which was used in its construction was arsenic. And similarly, when this talcum powder which was synthesized, it was produced, it was marketed, the main component was arsenic. And arsenic is one heavy metal which we will also be studying how it's harmful for people. It causes it contributes to air pollution in a very significant way. So there are small examples like this where the human population or people in general, they have been ignorant, and this ignorance has cost us. It has contributed to the rising levels of pollution, be it in water, air, or which has further led to increase in global warming and a lot of consequence or loss of biodiversity for that instance. And the main reason why a decline in environment is occurring, it is because of the unaware human population and the increasing size of human population. So that is why it becomes important for us to understand how we can take small steps, how we can be aware of the things that we use, how we can always check for probably the constituents of a particular product before we use them. And we can also make people around us aware uh, to be more alert of how we can intentionally or unintentionally contribute to the changes in environment. So it becomes important to study environmental sciences as it enlightens us, it makes us aware about the protection and conservation of environment, and it also puts forth a descriptive picture of the existing status of our surroundings. So as in this picture. So there is a picture wherein you have two contrasting images of a similar place, how it used to be and how it has become. So as I was saying, there are some toxic heavy metals, and it is also mentioned here arsenic is one of them. So there are toxic heavy metals like arsenic, cadmium, and lead. And this is a picture of Animas River in US. So this Animas River, it used to be very clean. It was not as polluted as it is now, but because of excessive gold mining, and so whenever gold is extracted, a lot of other heavy metals are also extracted along with that. And because of ignorance, because of improper protection or improper techniques to or improper what do you say measures were not taken to which allowed release of these metals into the river. It caused the aquatic life of this particular river, and it has changed drastically in color. The aquatic animals which were residing within this river, they were affected, and their lives were costed. So the point is that by merely comparing uh, pictures like these or looking at data like these, you can understand how our interferences because of human beings or our activities can cost us the life of not only human beings or the fellow people who are living around us, but also of aquatic as well as other life forms which also exist in the nature and are equally important for our survival. So the ones who probably had biology or others also, you must know how food chain exists and a food web exists and how each organism is dependent upon another organism for survival. If I have to survive on this earth, I require fellow insects, plants, butterflies, honeybees, and aquatic animals. I need everybody else in proper amount, in proper population to survive on earth so that a sustainable life can be present. So it's important that every organism is protected because survival of each one of them is important for our own survival. And that is why environmental studies are important. So EVS basically deals with everything that may possibly affect an organism, a population of organism, its survival. So it's important to understand and appreciate how nature, and more importantly, how we are tampering nature. And human interference is responsible for this drastic shift which is occurring in nature as visible by this picture. So it's environment, basically the interaction between living as well as non-living organism, it's being affected by human interferences, and that is why it's important for us to keep a check on how our activities are affecting any shifts in environment. So the book which you can refer for this chapter, there's a book by a History of Environmental Science by Michael Allaby. I'll be uploading that book today. So I is anybody of you giving the exam in Hindi? I don't think so, but is there somebody who is who gives writes the exam in Hindi. Everybody uses English as a medium. Okay, so I'm assuming everybody uses English as a medium for writing exams. So I'll be uploading a couple of books, and you
Ma'am,
must
Sanjay
refer.
has raised his hand. Sanjay
Okay,
has
sorry,
raised.
I didn't see. So Sanjay, you use Hindi as a medium for writing exams?
नो मैम बट हिंदी मीडियम से था इसलिए
अच्छा, तो I'll upload a PDF if it अगर उसे समझने में if it helps you, अगर उससे ज़्यादा अच्छे से समझ आए तो you can refer it. I'll upload a PDF आज ही which has all the 7 units and all the terms have been explained in Hindi. तो अगर वो use करना चाहते हो for your reference तो उसे use कर सकते हो. It's a very good PDF. ठीक है, तो I'll upload it for you and I'll also give you a couple of presentations of some other batch which are in Hindi. So you can also refer them for I don't have presentations for every topic. There are for some specific topics only, but it will give you an idea of कैसे you have to write answers or how you can go about write if you want to refer those. I'll upload them for you. So the scope of environment. So
Ma'am,
environment
I have a
as
question, ma'am.
yes.
Ma'am, do we have to go through the book that you are referring for this paper, or we can just focus on the notes which you are providing to us?
I suggest you refer books because
Because we
it
don't have much time, no, ma'am. We have a core course to be handled. We have certain things to do.
that is okay, but I think you have your exams in July, August, I think, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So you have a lot of time. It's for your personal choice. My suggestion would be you refer at least one book. They're very easy books. Baki, it's your choice. If you want to refer this presentation only, it's up to you. If you want to refer some other books, I'll be uploading books. Baki, it is totally up to you. So there is no specified thing that you have to do. अगर refer करना चाहते हो, feel free. मैं 2-3 books upload कर दूंगी. अगर नहीं करना चाहते हो, तो I'll suggest you should refer a book because it gives you a more technical outlook on how you should go about things. But अगर नहीं refer करना तो be it's your totally your call. ठीक है?
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Mhm. So, the scope of environment. So what do you think is, if I have opened this slide, so I'll anyway discuss it. So the environment is important. So you need to remember how you need to know how environment it is important for us. So of course we are human beings are looking at conservation of environment because we want to protect it for ourselves. We are concerned because resources khatam ho rahe hain and there is pollution happening. A lot of diseases are occurring, like coronavirus is there, which is an aerosol. So a lot of things are happening in the environment, and we are concerned about the environment because it is affecting us. But in order to conserve environment, we need to look at it from a whole point of view. To protect environment, the ecological effects also need to be taken into consideration. In addition to protecting ourselves, we must protect other organisms, as I said, plants, insects, other animals, aquatic life or terrestrial life. Every kind of organism must be conserved. It must be protected. Its population must be maintained in appropriate amount, in adequate amount, because for a healthy environment to exist, for a food chain to exist or a food web to exist in the nature, all organisms are dependent on one another for survival. We have herbivores who synthesize their own food. Then we have carnivores, like we are dependent upon, human beings are omnivorous. So we are dependent upon both plants and animals for obtaining food. So similarly, each organism is dependent upon some other organism for their survival on earth. And that is why it becomes necessity to not only protect ourselves, but also all the other organisms which may be under threat or which may be affected because of human interferences or all the consequences of human interferences. Apart from that, the scope of environment is to one important idea or one important scope of environment is to conserve the natural resources. So what are natural resources?
Ma'am, can I ask
Rivers,
a question?
rivers,
It's water,
जी
water bodies,
land,
ponds,
trees.
lakes.
Everything which is just obtained by from the nature.
Yes,
Everything.
Which
that
can
is
be
true.
obtained according to our needs.
All the
I
resources
think
that
which
are
are not
provided
man-made.
that can be obtained from the nature. So these
जा रही
resources
नहीं है
may
तो
be. Please mute yourself if you're not listening. It's okay. So anyway,
Ma'am,
uh,
I have a question regarding the scope of environment.
mhm,
Ma'am, I have read somewhere that the rate at which the carbon dioxide is released is much
mhm,
higher, and we cannot compensate even by planting trees at every land on the earth. So
mhm,
there is nothing we can do to compensate all the damages that human has done to the environment. So
mhm.
it is still worth to try to save the earth by planting trees.
It's definitely worth it because see the statistical data that we have, we've lost the hold of everything, and that is true. We've done much more harm than what we can compensate for. Clearly, we have done the emissions are really high, they're extremely high. So and the problem is that we have you see all those data. There is so much ppm of pollutants in the environment, and there is so much emission of carbon dioxide in the environment, but the problem is that as we are progressing, so we are, of course, you are a physics student, you are the ones who make all those instruments, or I think, I am not sure. So yeah, there are a lot of instruments which are there which help us calculate कि ठीक है इतना carbon dioxide is present in the environment and अभी इतना amount of pollutant या air pollutant, water pollutant is there in the nature. So we use these techniques to estimate कि इतना amount is present. But as we are progressing, so I would say 100 years ago or 150 years ago, हमें नहीं पता होगा कि something like cadmium poisoning would be there, or nuclear explosions would occur, or emission, or uranium or thorium would be so toxic to us, and they would be present. They would be so harmful for us. Or we didn't know कि Bhopal gas tragedy may occur because of human negligence. So my point is that कि we are in a at a state of time जहाँ पे we know a lot of harm has been done, and we have instruments, of course, some good high end instruments, of course, which estimates the pollutants which we know about, but there are still a lot of pollutants जो हमें शायद पता भी नहीं है, which have not really been discovered so far, or the people are still working on it, or maybe because of all these emissions some new reaction has occurred and there is something else, some new component which is there in the environment जो हमें नहीं पता is existent there. So it is important to plant trees because the current estimates or the current numbers that we have, uske according we are still safe for another 40-50 years. We still have this much time, if and that much time is anyway with us. So if we start planting trees today, so they may not have an immediate effect today, but maybe 10-20 years down the line, when those trees have grown, when the green cover has spread, it will definitely protect us, because trees are the ones who are absorbing all the harmful pollutants, and that is why it becomes necessary that as we are progressing, as we are moving towards development, so we do not forget planting trees, because trees are really protecting us. They are the ones who are giving us oxygen in the very first place, which is necessary for our survival. Trees nahi honge so nobody can survive. And secondly, so you realize the planting of trees is not just there for absorbing carbon dioxide. It's also there because they are giving us oxygen. Or agar we really cut them off, so pollution wala to is just a number which we are estimating using the techniques we have right now. And as the quality of or the type of instruments, as the efficiency of these instruments as it will increase in future, probably we'll get some better data or some good or bad numbers. But trees or plants are important for everybody because they are a source of food, and they are the only organisms which are capable of converting energy, which are capable of utilizing basically. They are the ones which convert light energy into chemical energy, and then it's further utilized by everybody else. So it is therefore important, and for oxygen, of course, that we keep on planting trees. And of course, it may not have an immediate effect right now, but 20-30 years down the line, maybe when those saplings or seedlings they turn into big trees, they'll definitely contribute to the increasing green cover, right? So could you, मतलब,
Okay, ma'am.
ठीक है. So, natural resources, the ones that we use, and everything that is around us, including your furniture, which is made from some kind of a wood, or even plastics as for that matter of fact. So everything that is all the metals that are there in your instruments, so everything that is there around you, it comes from some natural resource, and every resource is not replenishable. There are some resources which cannot be renewed. So therefore, it becomes extremely important to conserve resources, and especially the ones which are non-renewable, which are conventional, and if they become exhausted, you won't have a replacement for them. And similarly, because of extreme interference, increasing demand, increasing human population, these resources are being exploited and they are constantly being polluted. So, pollution is something which occurs because of human interference and because of the increasing population. So, these resources, they have to be protected, and one way of protecting these resources is to control pollution, and one way of controlling pollution is to probably limit the human population. And that is why countries like China has strict rules for how many kids a family can have, and India does not. And we are yeah, and we are moving towards becoming the most populated country of the world. So how many of you have seen Avengers Endgame? जिसमें किसने देखा?
Everyone, almost everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
I
Yes,
have
Everybody
everyone.
seen
has
Yes,
it.
ma'am.
everybody has seen that. So when Thanos says
Yes,
कि
ma'am.
when he wipes off half of the population, this is probably what he was trying to do. Because there are natural resources, but the human population is extremely huge. It is extremely high. So we do not have enough resources, and we have a population that is extremely huge. So to balance, so we cannot, of course, wipe out half of the population, but we can definitely control things like pollution, or we can conserve our natural resources. We can switch to better means or greener means, or those alternatives which do not harm our environment. Then there are a lot of social issues also connected to environment, and we'll be studying about a couple of social issues. But are you aware of some social issues or some upheavals related to environment? Has anybody ever heard of some movements?
There was some Kaveri calling
Yes, ma'am.
by
Chipko
Isha
movement.
Foundation.
No,
Kaveri?
Chipko movement.
Kaveri calling by Isha Foundation.
Very good. And do you know what this movement is about?
Yes, ma'am, because Kaveri has been depleted so much in these years,
Mhm.
and most of the time of the year, the Kaveri doesn't reach the main river. Its tributaries are almost finished, so Isha Foundation raised the issue of Kaveri calling, that we
What's your
have to
name?
call, we have to give Isha Foundation initiated this Kaveri calling, that we have to make a call so that the support. This means we support this issue, and
Mhm.
the government must address it.
What is your name, Bacha?
I'm Kunal.
Good, Kunal. So yeah, you're right. Kaveri, you also have this in your syllabus, just by the way. So you will be covering this in your syllabus as well, how levels of rivers are declining. So somebody else was giving another example. I cut them midway. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
no.
That was, I think, Chipko Andolan. That trees
Yeah,
cutting.
very good. Very good. Chipko Andolan. And have you heard of Apiko Andolan?
Only heard, but don't know about it.
It's okay. So what is Chipko Andolan? Tell me something about it.
I mean, think the natives, I think the forest natives were saving the trees for cutting and all. Yes.
They were saving the trees
So,
from
so
cut.
they were just surrounding the trees from the intruders and that forest
Mhm.
hunters and all.
Yes, so there was deforestation occurring, and a group of women, they started hugging trees to in order to protect them from being cut, and that is what led to the beginning of Chipko movement. And it was also one of the first feminist movements in India, with respect to environment. So we'll be covering all these movements, and there are a lot of movements that you will be covering in environmental sciences. And the last one is the impact on human population. So the impact, what do you think is the impact on of human population on environment? Or anyone?
It rises in different types of diseases, such types cancer and lungs diseases. Many types of lung diseases can occur due to pollution and environmental due to environmental effects.
Very good. It can give rise to a lot of diseases, lifestyle diseases, and diseases
Yes,
like
ma'am.
cancer.
Ozone depletion is the main cause for skin cancer in Australia, like countries.
Very good. Ozone depletion leads to formation of a component which contributes to, say, skin cancer in a lot of countries. Uh,
Mutations also.
Ma'am,
yes,
average of
mutations because of ultraviolet rays. And
Yes,
yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
And cause of cataract.
Average, yes.
Cause of cataract in the eye.
okay, so one aspect is that uh, if the increasing amount of population causes a lot of, it can give rise to a lot of diseases. Is there some other aspect which is affected by human population?
Ma'am, please
Increased
pardon.
use of natural resources.
The nutritional count of the food, we can say, the nutritional count of the food, the vegetables are not growing up to that level. They're not providing that nutrition for sustaining our body.
And that is the nutritional quality is
The
declining
nu- yes, ma'am. Because of the
because of
soil, because soil, there are chemicals released into the soil.
very
Yes,
good
ma'am. Soil is
chemicals being
polluted.
There is soil pollution, of
And
course.
over exploitation also, over exploitation of natural resources. So
yes
because
over
of
exploitation
And
of
using
natural.
of fertilizers in the
fragmentation,
soil is making also.
Very good. Using fertilizers and pesticides is the reason why the nutritional quality of these vegetables or the food that we consume is declining. Then somebody said overexploitation of resources. So yes, there are less number of resources, human population. So like I think you know the rich get richer and the poor gets poorer, and that is because the poorer sector or the middle class or the poor sector of society is not does not have access to appropriate amount of resources. They cannot afford resources or a better standard of living, and that is happening because of this lack of awareness, of course, and this rapid increase in population. So do you think there's something else which is also affected by human population?
yes, ma'am, I think the aquatic life is also basically affected. Like for example, that displacement or the
Ma'am, we are
killing of
taking the
turtles and
land that
all.
should be covered by the animals. That is there also. हम लोग मैम
Okay,
कब्जा करके रखे
Ma'am,
हैं पूरी लैंड
there,
पे.
very
there
good,
is
and that
a bird named there is a bird named dodo bird, which is an extinct.
very good.
And
Bolo.
passenger pigeon and also.
So yes, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Deforestation.
Yes, deforestation, and like somebody said, so जिसने dodo example दिया, what's your name?
Ma'am, ma'am, recently the Indian cheetah also extincted from India.
Yes, very good. Cheetah has also become extinct. So basically, when organisms are becoming extinct, right? और मैंने अभी कहा था कि each organism plays a very important role in the food cycle. So some organisms are getting eliminated. So the biodiversity or the diversity of organisms is reducing, and that is because of human interferences or the increasing human population and human demand. So loss of biodiversity, which is whose examples are the extinction of dodo bird and Indian cheetah. So these are one of the two primary examples of extinct organisms on Earth. So increasing human population are affecting biodiversity of uh, these endangered and these rare organisms which are important for Earth, which are important for the ecosystem.
Yes, मैम हमारी वजह से मैम ऑयल स्पिल होता है जिसमें लाखों एक्विटिक एनिमल्स मारे जाते हैं.
Yes, oil spills होता है, right? जो बहुत frequently होता है, and a lot of organisms they lose their life. So have you ever heard of this term called coral bleaching?
Yes,
कभी ये
ma'am.
Yes,
what?
ma'am,
Yes,
Coral
ma'am.
Islands. Yes, ma'am.
So does anybody know what coral bleaching is?
I think the spreading of that
मैम
plant on the
maybe
water.
कोरल बीच में मैम ऑयल स्पिल की वजह से जो छोटे छोटे कोरल आइलैंड बने होते हैं वहाँ पे जो कोरल्स होते हैं उनको पता हो जाता है ऐसे कुछ करके तो ना.
नहीं 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 oil spills की वजह से नहीं होता. So basically corals are organisms. They are so have you ever heard of, I think bio वाले बच्चों ने सुना होगा, symbiotic association. पता है क्या होता है, या mutual association?
Yes,
शरण
ma'am.
और स्वप्निल, आई थिंक बायो वाला जो स्टूडेंट था. सो व्हाट आर सिम्बायोटिक और म्यूचुअल एसोसिएशंस? ओके, So basically क्या होता है, when sometimes in environment, we know every organism is dependent on some other, we are also dependent on a lot of organisms, but there are some organisms which have to be physically together to have to survive. And so there are some certain types of organisms in certain cases wherein two organisms are dependent upon one another, and they need to be physically together. They need to exist together for both these organisms to survive. So if you have ever heard of this term coral reef, so there is an invertebrate on. So I'll show you some pictures in the next class. You must have seen them on TV shows. या कहीं पर. You definitely must have seen them. So on ocean shores, there are coral reefs. Coral reefs are some invertebrate. There are some marine organisms, and on marine organisms के साथ there is an algae which exists, and they live together. Both of them are dependent upon one another. So when the levels of carbon dioxide they increase in the environment, so carbon dioxide ke there are certain sinks, right? So CO2 is the primary reason why global warming is occurring. One sink of carbon dioxide is the trees, the green cover that you plant. One important major sink of carbon dioxide are oceans. So carbon dioxide can dissolve in water, right? So when the levels increase too much, they enter water body, they get dissolved there and they convert into carbonate ions. And when they get converted, they form carbonic ions. The pH of water, it starts becoming acidic. And when the pH of water it starts becoming acidic, then the coral reefs which are present on the edges of these oceans in large amount, so they start dying off. The algae which is present there, it cannot survive such sensitive change, such fluctuations in pH, and they die, which is known as coral bleaching. So another impact of human population. So this is an indirect impact of human population. You're emitting so much carbon dioxide into the environment कि trees can no longer take, and trees are getting cut of course. जितने trees हैं, they can no longer take in so much carbon dioxide, and therefore this CO2 it starts entering the oceanic bodies. It changes the pH when amounts of CO2 become extremely high, and the aquatic organisms are also affected. So everything directly or indirectly. So pollution is the direct impact of human beings on environment, and the consequence of pollution is the indirect impact. So a lot of so everything, every deviating thing that we see is a consequence of pollution or human activity in some way or the other. So environment mein there are a lot of factors, and all these sectors or all these factors are getting affected. So when we talk about environment, when we say there is environment and human population or human beings are affecting the environment. So whenever you hear this thing, to environment ke there are some components, and these components are getting affected because of environments, because of human interference or anthropogenic activities. So, like somebody said, ki soil pollution is happening, and the quality of vegetables is declining. So this change, it is a part of lithosphere or the lithospheric region of the environment. Similarly, like I gave the example of coral bleaching, where coral reefs are dying because of increasing levels of carbon dioxide. So the hydrosphere or the region of environment where water body is present, where the aquatic life is present, that particular portion is getting affected. Now, similarly, somebody said कि ozone depletion हो रहा है, this formation of ozone, and then a component is getting formed, just as skin cancer is occurring, and you have air pollution of course happening, then there are air pollutants in the air, chlorofluorocarbons are there, so a lot of pollutants of acid rains occur. So all these activities they are happening in the atmosphere. And biosphere is when somebody said some organism became extinct, dodo became extinct, or some plant became extinct. So this is the impact of human population on the biosphere, on the living components. So these three, lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere, these three, air, which is land, water, and air, these are the abiotic components of the environment, and biosphere are the living organisms which reside in all these three areas. And in any change in environment because of human beings or naturally also, it affects the existence of all these four spheres. So when we talk about the different components of environment, so earth is the only non-planet on on in the solar system which has so much diversity, and life has been possible because of the healthy interactions which exist between biosphere and all these three other components of environment. So these three major components, they can be categorized basically into hydrosphere, which is the water wala portion of, or the water containing sphere of earth. Then we have atmosphere, which is the air containing sphere of earth. We have lithosphere, lithos matlab rock, which is the rock containing sphere of earth. And we have biosphere, bio matlab biotic organisms, the living sphere of earth or the environment. So these are the four major components of environment. Now what have, or how much do you know about all these components? What is lithosphere? Do you know something about lithosphere?
The land where we live is of all constitutes of lithosphere.
The land where we live. Good. Somebody else wants to try? Scientifically speaking, is it core, mantle, crust? When I say lithosphere, is lithosphere the whole of the earth, or is it the core
I
portion?
think the crust and upper mantle basically.
Okay, so the
The
crust.
first two
Mhm.
layers.
Yes,
First two layers of that.
the upper mantle and the crust area, it constitutes to form the lithosphere. So Earth can be stratified into outer crust, middle mantle, and your inner core region. And lithosphere is the outermost layer of the crust, which represents the, so basically the land mass of the planet, which consists of rock, soil, sediment, minerals. That is the area which is known as your lithosphere. So a lot of geographical structures exist there, like plateaus, landforms, mountains, then deep valleys, seabeds. So all these things, they constitute to form the surface of lithosphere, which is uneven. So the surface of lithosphere is of course uneven. It is also the surface of seabed. It's also the huge mountains or you see, or the valleys that you see. So everything is a part of your lithosphere. So which is the highest point on lithosphere on Earth? Come on, guys. Which is the highest point of lithosphere?
Himalaya,
Mount Everest.
Mount
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 Everest,
Everest.
Everest.
sorry.
Mount
Mount
Everest.
Everest.
Mount Everest is the highest point of the lithosphere on Earth. Similarly, lit apart from the structures, the geographical structures that they form, they are all, lithosphere is also the region where soil comes from, where all your minerals, all your elements, they come from. And geographical events like biological events like weathering of rock, soil erosion, or biogeochemical cycles, or presence of important nutrients, or the terrestrial ecosystems like forests, grassland, deserts. So all these are found on lithosphere. So lithosphere is basically the uppermost outer region of Earth, the crust plus the upper mantle portion, which forms geographical life forms on Earth, and is also responsible for constituting soil. And so, which life forms or which biotic organisms does the soil sustain? Which organisms live in soil?
Microorganisms.
Okay, microorganisms and all plants. Do you think all the
Yes.
plants, terrestrial
Not all.
plants? So all
Terrestrial
terrestrial
plants.
all the terrestrial plants as well as your microorganisms, like somebody said, which is very true. So a lot of not all, but a lot of microorganisms, a majority of microorganisms, they reside on the lithosphere. Now moving on to the hydrosphere. So what is hydrosphere? What do you think is hydrosphere?
Total amount of water present on.
The total amount of water.
Domain
So
domains of water.
okay, domains of water. So what are the two major domains of water on Earth? Can you think of something?
Sea, ocean, river.
Oceans and river, right? So you have, so basically we have salty water and we have fresh water. And oceanic water is
Salty water.
salty water, and fresh
Salt.
water is the one you get from glaciers and your rivers. So basically hydrosphere refers to it represents the water masses on the planet Earth, and they may be in solid, liquid, or gaseous form. In solid forms, they are in the form of glaciers. In liquid form, they may be in the form of oceans, or the salty, or the brackish, or the consumable fresh water from rivers. Or it may also be in the form of water vapors or precipitating clouds, or in the form of rainfall. So it exists in different forms, and it covers almost three-fourths of the entire surface of Earth. Majorly, so 97% of this three-fourth thing is because of oceans or the sea, but the consumable water is the remaining 3%, which is the water resources that we actually use. They come from the freshwater bodies, which are exhaustible, like glaciers, river, lakes, ponds, and they're also prone to pollution. So that is why it becomes very important to conserve the freshwater bodies or the drinkable or the usable forms of water. Now, so it is also important hydrosphere because it is responsible for carrying forth the process of water cycle. The rains that occur all over the earth, they are possible because of the hydrosphere or the ample amount of water in hydrosphere. So that is why hydrosphere is one of the most important components of earth, and it primarily contains of the water system. Then the third element is the atmosphere. So what is atmosphere?
All the gases and the basically gaseous components present in there.
All the gaseous components which are present, the air component of earth. So when we talk about atmosphere, so there are certain layers of earth's atmosphere, which are troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, and exosphere. So each of these layers has different properties. So are you aware of what these um, zones they refer to? Different zones of atmosphere? No. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know what these different zones are or no?
Yes, ma'am. We are no.
Okay, so tell me something about it if you are aware of it.
Ma'am, it is a range from the Earth's surface. Uh, Ma'am,
Mm-hmm.
it is divided into five types, and it is divided on the range or the height from this Earth's level.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Then
So are there some differences in temperature?
yes, ma'am. In the difference in temperature and the flow of air.
Very good. So good, like you correctly said, they have been categorized based upon the distance from the Earth's surface, and they can be categorized into troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, and exosphere. And each one has a different distance from the Earth's surface, as it has been mentioned here. And each of them has a different set of temperature, macroclimatic conditions, which is different from different for all these zones. So all these layers have specific properties. All of the air traffic which exists or which is there, so it resides in the tropospheric region. Then we have stratospheric region, wherein the ozone layer resides and absorbs all the solar radiations or the temperature fluctuations, and also is the area where formation of or presence of chlorofluorocarbons occurs for the very first time. They basically the ozone hole and the ozone layer, both of these things are present in the stratospheric region. Then you have mesospheric region, which is the upper portion, and density of air becomes relatively low in this particular region, and solar absorption or solar radiation is not absorbed as at such high intensities as the other two levels. So these are the four layers. You must know about the differences in these layers, how they are different, and how when pollution occurs, it is primarily in the stratospheric and in the tropospheric region. So when ozone depletion occurs or the air pollutants are there, they primarily exist in the stratospheric region, and they move to the tropospheric region to affect us later on. So UV radiations or fluorofluorocarbons, ozone depletion products, or the volatile organic pollutants. So all these components are initially present in the stratospheric region, and once they interact with the ozone layer, and then they move on to the tropospheric region. So these are the components of the environment, and then comes the biospheric region. So biospheric is the
And,
uh,
and why
yes,
is the thermosphere and exosphere have such an high temperature?
because they have such
Even they
high.
are the outest layer of the Earth. They should be the lowest, no?
No, they have higher temperatures because of the absence of gases, because of the difference in their chemical structure, and also uh, once. Have you read in detail about how the gases or the chemical constituency it affects the temperature of these particular zones? So then we move towards the thermospheric region. So in that particular at in those particular zones, the oxygen atoms or other um, ions which are present, so they start absorbing the short wave radiations of solar energy. So they, because there are a lot of ionic gases, there are a lot of free atoms which are present, so they are more prone, they are more able to absorb the, and you I think know, shorter the wavelength, higher is the energy. This is how this works, right? ऐसा ही होता है ना, if I'm not wrong,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So
Yes,
they,
ma'am.
Yes.
so the shorter wavelength radiations are present towards the upper region. So though these ions, these elements, they are more able to absorb these short wavelength radiations, and because they can rapidly absorb these, so the temperature it rapidly increases from a low temperature to extremely high temperatures as high as 1200. So as we start moving, as in it's clearly visible in the mesospheric region, the temperature it starts declining because sun is present, and the longer radiations are shorter and longer, both radiations are present there, but these free atoms or free ions are not present in the mesospheric region, so those shorter radiations are not getting absorbed. But as you move towards upper regions or upper zones like thermosphere, exosphere, in those particular areas the chemical composition of the atmosphere it is drastically different. You have these free oxygen atoms, you have these chemical ionic chemical structures which can absorb the shorter wavelengths, and this leads to a hotter or a warmer temperature in the upper zones. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the importance of environmental studies, I think you understand by now why it is important, because all the global issues which are present, which are there in the first place because of us, because of our predecessors who were not careful enough, and it is important that we as citizens of Earth are responsible enough that we take. So, of course, EVS or environmental studies is important because one individual, even if he starts contributing towards nature, cannot make a difference unless all people come together and they play their particular part in conserving or protecting nature. So, there are global issues like global warming, which is because of these emissions, and those high emissions are because of human population and their need for development. Then there is depletion of ozone layer, which is again because of emission of chlorofluorocarbons, carbon dioxide, and all those toxic chemical structures present in the stratospheric region. Then there are things like acid rain. So, I think everybody must have heard about the Taj Mahal incident, right? Wherein the color of Taj Mahal it
Yes, ma'am.
turned to yellow. So that it turned yellow because of acid rains. Everybody knows that, right? So we'll also be covering
Yes.
that case study. So it turned yellow because there were activities which contributed to high levels of sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere, which converted to sulfuric acid, and then they got precipitated. They got condensed into clouds, and then we had acid rains. Similarly, marine pollution, like I gave you, like somebody said, oil spilling, which is one of the prime major reasons of marine pollution. Then coral bleaching, as I gave you an example, then loss of biodiversity. So it's important because there are these global issues that have to be handled, and we are the ones who need to be careful, or we should be more aware of how small things contribute to these. Similarly, we cannot, of course, stop development. Do you have a class, Abhi?
Yes,
Can
ma'am.
I take
Yes.
class?
जी
नो
एक
मैम क्लास नहीं होगी आज सर ने बोला
Abhi, so I'll take 2 minutes more till I'll end this class. ठीक है? So
जी
we
सबका जी
ओके मैम
अदर जी की क्लास है मैम
अच्छा है, so I'll quickly give me a minute. Okay, I'll end this now. So we have to find a that we cannot stop our development. We have to keep developing, and we also have to conserve resources. And the balance between development and conservation is known as sustainable development. हम next class में पढ़ेंगे. And for that we have to reduce this exponential increase in pollution and population. So there are some alternative solutions, and these alternative solutions to curb the harmful effects of human population and pollution, they are environmental management. Environmental management consists of three major factors. Pehla is the account of human impact. We must be aware ki how our activities are having consequences on environment, how our small actions are contributing to these severe changes. Second is sustainable development, which I said is the balance between development and conservation. And third is environmental education, which is happening right now. How people are being made aware of what appropriate actions can be taken for conservation of environment. So we'll end here. My computer has